What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made this. Beautiful, delicious, porky, studded, scratch-made, amazing, homemade mortadella, turned into Anthony Bourdain's favorite sandwich. Coming up. This is some pork. Pat it dry. And what I got here is some chunks of some really lean pork loin, as well as some pork belly. So hopefully we can dial in a perfect 70-30 meat to fat ratio. Because today we're finally making some mortadella, which has been on my to-do list for years at this point, but I've never actually made mortadella before. I've come close, meaning I've made some really large emulsified sausages, but I'm not here to compare mortadella to bologna for all the angry Italians out there. But the process of making it is quite similar. But for mortadella, the spices are a little bit different. It's an all pork sausage typically, but most importantly, it's studded with pistachios and big chunks of fat, which give it a really cool look and a really great texture. But first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up all this pork. That way our lean is quite lean and our fatty is quite fatty, because we're making an emulsified sausage today, so times and temperatures and the whole process is a little bit more particular and a little bit more involved than a normal kind of sausage that we'd make here on the channel. So having complete control over your fat and your meat is a really good idea. So to get started, I'm just gonna remove the fat cap from all of this pork loin. And once all cleaned up, we'll go ahead and cube these up into nice small little cubes that'll fit down our meat grinder a little bit easier and freeze a bit quicker. And like I said, a traditional mortadella is a pork sausage, but you can do it with pork and beef. You can do an all beef mortadella if you like. But today, because it's my first time ever making mortadella, I figured we go all pork, make life a little bit easier. And as for our pork belly over here, I chose this one specifically because it's got this big band of fat, because really what we want is some pork back fat, but they didn't have any of that at the store today, so I figured we could just get some pork belly because there's a lot of fat on there. We can even trim this meat up a little bit if we want. But again, we're going for a 70-30 meat to fat ratio, but anywhere in the 70-30 to 80-20 range of lean to meat will get us a nice juicy sausage. So if we do leave a little bit of extra meat on this fat, not too concerned about it, but we'll go ahead and get this all cubed up as well. And just like that, all the meat is cubed up. I got the lean pork over here, and this is a mixture of our fats. This is gonna be emulsified into the meat, and then some of this, which is part of the 30%, is gonna be cubed up, and that's gonna be our internal garnish. So for now, into the freezer this goes, while we take this remaining fat and cube it up just a little bit finer. You can make these internal garnish fat pockets as big as you like. I'm thinking little 1 by 1 centimeter cubes is probably gonna get the job done. And this probably would have been a lot easier if I didn't already cube this up, but that's okay. I did do something similar to this when I did my andouille recipe a couple years back, where I took some chunks of pork belly and mixed it into the farce. Really love how that came out, so I'm pretty excited to see how this works out. And hopefully I'm not making these too small. I also apologize for any wind noise you might be hearing. It is literally the cold front ending summer and beginning winter. It's supposed to drop like 30 degrees in the next couple hours, which is pretty exciting, especially when you're trying to make emulsified sausages outside. And to get this fat ready for our mortadella, we're gonna go ahead and blanch this off real quick. And what that's gonna do is slightly cook the outside, which is gonna help it keep its shape when we put it into the eventual sausage, because if we put it in raw, it would probably get really streaky or just become part of the farce, as opposed to being individual fat chunks suspended in an emulsion. So we're just gonna let this blanch in some boiling water for about 2 to 3 minutes. And just like that, after about 3-4 minutes, these are looking really good, nice and plump, and they're not stuck together anymore, which is nice. But now we're gonna go ahead and shock these in an ice bath to cool them down and make sure they're not cooking over too much. And after chilling in the ice bath for a little bit, out these come onto a paper towel, and we're gonna dry these thoroughly. And I'm gonna park these in the fridge until we need them. Spices for our mortadella include some kosher salt, some pink curing salt, #1, granulated garlic, granulated onion, some white pepper, ground coriander, some mace, and some freshly grated nutmeg. And get that all mixed up. And spices for mortadella kind of vary from recipe to recipe from what I've seen, but it's a pretty mildly seasoned sausage, you know, no big bold flavors in there, but also everything is pretty light in color, you know, no paprika or cayenne or anything like that, because this is a pretty pale sausage at the end of the day. And also I did put curing salt in here, but I think traditionally it's an uncured sausage, but I like that charcuterie taste and that cured vibe. Plus I might be putting some smoke on this, so I'm gonna throw it in there, but you can do you. Change up the spices however you see fit. Cure it, not cure it, up to you. And now that our meat and our fat are nice and cold, through the grinder we go. I'm gonna start with the fat. And we're going through the coarse side for the first pass because it creates a little bit less friction. So hopefully we can get multiple passes without this meat getting too hot. Too cold, heard. Popped it. Keeping the meat and the fat separate still at this stage, but now in we go with all of our lean pork. And again, this meat is partially frozen, probably about 32, 33 degrees. As cold as we can get it without it being rock hard to make sure it doesn't jam up the grinder too much. Beautiful, nice clean grind on that. And if we take a temp, still about 30 to 32 degrees in there. So I'm gonna swap this die out real quick and pop on the fine die. Probably should put the blade back in first. Now we'll go ahead and send this through one more time. And normally this process is done in a buffalo chopper or a high-powered food processor, but my food processor can't quite handle it, which is why I'm just gonna send it through the meat grinder 2 or 3 times to make sure the meat is cut up as fine as possible. Beautiful grind on that, starting to look nice and fine, but let's see what we're rocking as a temperature. Still 31, so we can get away with one more grind. And whenever you're doing a multiple pass on the same grind like this, it can get gunked up pretty quick in there. So I find it best to just go little piece by little piece, kind of let it clear. And once it's open again, drop another piece in. That way it doesn't get too gunked up and you have to bust out the plunger. Starting to look nice and smooth, little hot doggy. Getting up to 38 degrees. So at this point, I'm probably gonna pop this back in the freezer for a little bit. But before I go, I'm gonna send this fat through one more time as well. On second thought, this is about 45 degrees, so this is going back in the freezer too. And after chilling in the freezer for another 30 minutes or so, it's down below 32 degrees again. So through the grinder we go. It's especially important with the fat to make sure it doesn't get too warm. Otherwise it can smear and break your emulsion down the road, which would not be good. And that is looking absolutely perfect. And just for good measure, we'll send this pork through one more time as well. Beautiful, nice, fine grind on that. Whoops. And now with all of our meat thoroughly ground and finely chopped, all we gotta do now is emulsify our meat, our fat, our spices, and our water. So into the stand mixer we go. And again, this is like 30 degrees, pretty cold. And hopefully it all fits in this mixer. And we'll start mixing. And to our lean meat, we'll go in with all of our spices. And I've also got some ice water measured out here. This is 20%. Usually I'm a 10% guy when it comes to sausages, but emulsified sausages can take a little bit more water to get that nice, smooth farce we're after. And we'll slowly start going in with this as well. And that should really help change the texture. Starting to come together nicely. I'm gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl, make sure nothing's getting clumped on the bottom or anything like that. And we'll keep mixing. And after a few minutes of mixing and whipping in there, it's all become one uniform color. I'm not seeing too many big chunks of meat, although there are still a few floating around in there. But the more I mix, the more they become incorporated, which is exactly what we're after. Sitting at 36, 35 degrees. We don't want to go anywhere above like 40, 45, but we're getting pretty close on this. It's getting nice and sticky and turning into a uniform batter. And once everything's looking nice and smooth and nice and sticky and you start worrying about that temperature creeping up too high, in we go with all of our frozen fat. We're just gonna kind of chip this in as it mixes and wait for it all to disappear into the farce for one uniform texture. Kind of like making a hot dog. It's not like a lot of other emulsions, like a mayonnaise or something. Right now we're slowly drizzling in the fat or the oil if we're making a mayonnaise. Starting to come together, still seeing some fat particles, but we're just gonna keep an eye on temps. And now that the fat's in there, we really don't wanna go above like 50, 55 degrees, but we can start to let it warm up a little bit. That'll actually help with the whole incorporation process here. And it's also at this stage we can go in with our binder. I'm going in with some C-bind. This is a carrot fiber binder, works really well, especially for emulsified sausages, because it can really retain a lot of water with just a little bit of it. But it can also absorb rendered fat. So for an emulsified sausage like this, where it's really easy to break that emulsion, having this around gives me better peace of mind. Although I don't think you need a binder. I don't think traditionally they use binders in mortadella, but not gonna hurt anything. So we'll just sprinkle that in. And also, as far as liquids go, you could be a lot more creative. I've seen people use red wine, I've seen people use white wine, but I'm sticking with water today. Now we just continue mixing. Oh, there it goes. And just like that, after a couple minutes of mixing, I'm not seeing any fat particles or meat particles. It's all kind of one color. Nice blonde color on there too, but looking pretty good. Internal temp's still about 47, 48 degrees, so I know we're good there. So now we can go in with our internal garnish, which is of course our blanched fat cubes. But if we put these in right now, they're not gonna adhere to the meat and they might pop out once we slice the mortadella up. So I'm gonna go ahead and coat these in some milk powder, which is usually the binder I use. And that should help them bind to the meat. And again, stay submerged in the emulsion. But a nice heavy dusting. Then I'll go ahead and pop these into a sieve to remove any of the excess. And in we go. These are weird. They look like the marshmallows from Lucky Charms or something. Kind of cool. And I'm also going to be going in with some pistachios. And I don't know if it's necessary to do it with these, but I'm going to toss those in the milk powder as well. Why not? While I got it here. And just like that, I believe our mortadella farce is done. This is weird. It feels a lot like I'm making cookies for some reason. Similar kind of sticky texture. I guess it is a batter after all. But with the nuts in there, it felt like I was putting chocolate chips in. Kind of bizarre, folks. Does not smell like chocolate chip cookies, though. Now at this point, we are good to go. All we gotta do is stuff this into a casing and we'll have ourselves some mortadella. But because I just used a paddle attachment on that stand mixer instead of a food processor, there's a very high likelihood that I just whipped a whole bunch of air into this farce, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it will mess with the texture a little bit, and we might have a bunch of tiny little air pockets inside the link, which just doesn't look very professional. Again, it would eat just as fine, but if you have a vac chamber on hand and you want to give this a quick little suck, you can remove all the air pockets that way. So I'm probably going to do this in batches, just a little bit of suckage to get all the air out of there for hopefully a tighter bind. The vac chamber is pretty small, so that's about as much as I can do at a time because it wants to expand when it's in there. Kind of gross looking. But as it comes out, into the stuffer we go. Again, trying to pack that as tight as possible to eliminate air pockets. Ew. And with all of our freshly sucked meat in the stuffer, it's time to make one giant link, which is the nice part about these big old sausages. A lot less tedious. And what I got here is a 124 millimeter by 24 inch casing, I believe. I've used these in the past for making bologna. And it should be perfect for this. And these are really tough, so we don't have to worry about popping it or anything like that. Get on there. Now I'm just gonna make a gigantic bologna chub, trying to stuff this as thick and as full as humanly possible. Again, to avoid air pockets and make sure it is in fact nice and plump and nice and uniform. This is so much easier than going for a bunch of tiny little links. Nice and tight, a lot of pressure. Feel that chub forming in your hand. And that's all she wrote. And there we have it, folks. Give that a nice little twisty. And now I'm gonna find some string and tie that off. And just like that, all cased up, we've got ourselves a beautiful chub 5 pounds of mortadella. So now I'm gonna hang this in my fridge overnight to let that cure do its job, let all the spices hydrate. And by hanging it, hopefully it'll get nice and plump and maintain its shape as opposed to being on its side like that. So we'll check back in on this tomorrow. One overnight later, our mortadella is coming out of the fridge and looking absolutely beautiful. And by that I mean pretty much exactly the same, except feeling a little bit more cold and a little bit more firm. And if you look, you can actually see the pistachios in there. That's pretty cool. But now I'm gonna go ahead and smoke this off. And that is not a traditional thing you're gonna see with mortadella most of the time, but I think it'll add some really nice flavor. And this is a barbecue channel after all. But if you want it to be a little bit more traditional, at this stage you could throw it in the oven or pop it in a sous vide or something like that, which we are gonna do. But first we're gonna cold smoke this. So let's go throw it on the pit. I'm gonna be smoking this in the old pellet grill today just because it's convenient. I removed all the insides down here so we got some room for this thing to hang. I'm just gonna pop it right about there. Not touching the bottom or any of the components in there, so that is a good thing. And this way we can maintain our shape and hopefully get smoke all around it. Got the old pellet tube filled up in there for a nice long, low and slow, gentle cold smoke because we do want this to be a very gentle cooking process because it is such a fatty, emulsified sausage. We don't want to spike the temps and break that emulsion and end up with a really greasy, leaky, crumbly sausage. So I think a cold smoke is fitting. As for pellets, of course, I'm using some Smokin pecan shell pellets, my favorite pellet, and these are absolutely fantastic. They're made of 100% pecan shells, no wood, no fillers, no additives, or anything like that, and they're probably the smokiest pellet that I've used, and they've got great flavor, and I can smell it already. It smells great. And if you want to get some of these for yourself, you can check my link down below and get 10% off your first order, or you can head to chudsbbq.com. We sell them there as well. And they're doing yet another giveaway. So if you want to get a year's supply of Smokin pecan pellets delivered to your door for free, that is 1 box per month for an entire year. You can check out the link in the description box of this video where you go to their website, you enter your name, your email address, and then you click the little scroll down window and say you heard about it from me. And one of my viewers will win a year's supply of Smokin pecan shell pellets. So be sure to check them out. These are fantastic. Highly recommend it. But for now, I'm just going to let that smoke roll. Nice, gentle, cold smoke. Probably give it 2, 3, maybe 4 hours. Depends on where the day takes me. And hopefully we get some good color and some lovely smoky flavor. So we'll check back in on that in a couple hours. It's been about 4 or 5 hours on this cold smoke, and I think that is plenty of smoking time. That smoke tube is about to run out, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this bad boy out of here. But taking a look at it, doesn't really look much different, but it's feeling really firm, really bouncy, really good texture on it, honestly. And I probably shouldn't say it at this stage, but I'm feeling pretty confident about this one. Got high hopes. But we do need to cook this thing through, and the easiest and most consistent way to do that is in sous vide. So I got a sous vide bath set up in my kitchen at 145 degrees, and I'm gonna pop this in there for probably about 4 to 5 hours. I would do less, but it was actually pretty chilly today, so this is kind of cold to the touch still. But general rule of thumb is an hour per inch, and this is about 4.5 inches, which is average. So I'm gonna pop this into the water bath. I'm gonna see if I can find a bag that'll fit this thing, but it's not likely. So I might just go in right like this, and we're just gonna hope for the best. But we'll check back in on this once it's cooked. So after about 5 hours in the water bath, this thing was looking absolutely beautiful. The water in the sous vide was running clear, so I know no fat leached out or anything weird happened. I felt it. It was feeling nice and plump and nice and turgid and fully cooked. So then I dumped out the hot water out of this container, and I got the bright idea to stick a probe in it just to see what the internal temp was, to make sure it was up to 145, which it was. But when I pulled the probe out, there was a literal geyser of fat that shot out of this thing, which is weird seeing how it's only at 145 internal. So I plugged the hole, which is around here somewhere, right there, with my thumb, and I immediately filled this tub up with cold water and a bunch of ice to bring this down in temperature and hopefully halt the fat from leaching out too much, but probably shouldn't have done that. So if you're doing this at home, just trust the sous vide process. You don't need to take an internal temp, but I think we should be fine, although I did feel some fat that was kind of forming inside the casing here. I can still feel it. It's kind of gross. So when we do open this up, there very well may be a bunch of liquid fat around the outside, which is just not a good look. So yeah, don't be probing this thing. Just go with your gut. But at the very least, I know this end will be good. If this end is a little bit shrivelly when we take it out, we'll know why. But I'm gonna keep this in the ice bath for another little bit, probably about 20 minutes until it comes down and is fully chilled. And then we're gonna pop it in the fridge to chill and set up overnight. And then tomorrow we'll open it up, toss it on the meat slicer, and see how this mortadella came out. And after chilling in the fridge overnight, I have come to the chud shop, mostly because this is where the meat slicer is. But I think it's finally time to slice into this chub and see how it looks. I think for starters, we're just gonna go right down the middle here. And now the moment of truth. Ooh, that looks really nice. Good blonde color on that meat, good studdage. That fat worked out really nicely. Pistachios look good. Really nice emulsion on that too, not too many air pockets. And it smells really nice. Go ahead and take this wrapper off. And that is what I was talking about last night when I poked it and all that fat was leaching into the paper. That's where it is, so shouldn't have done that, but all in all, that mistake aside, very pleased with how this is looking. It is always satisfying when a big emulsion like this comes out properly. Good fat suspension in there, feeling nice and solid, but now we gotta go ahead and slice this up. And now it's time to find out, will the fat and pistachios stay within the meat under a really thin slice? Only one way to find out. So far, so good. Absolutely beautiful. I'm going nice and thin on this stuff, but everything is going according to plan. Pistachios are staying in, fat is staying in, and it is looking quite lovely. So now I'm gonna go ahead and slice a bunch of this up. And just like that, all sliced up, we've got ourselves a beautiful mound of some freshly made mortadella. Smells great. Looks great. And as much as I want to dive into this right now and see how it came out, there is a sandwich that I've always wanted to try to make, which is one of Anthony Bourdain's favorite sandwiches, which is only 5 ingredients and super simple. He starts out with a Kaiser roll or a sourdough roll, and then he hits that with some mayonnaise, some Dijon, some mortadella that's been griddled off and topped with provolone cheese. So super simple. Let's make one. So I've got a cast iron here, ripping hot, gonna go in with a little bit of oil, and then we're gonna go down with some of our lovely freshly made mortadella. We kind of fold that up, make a little pile here. Yeah, we'll make another pile over here. We'll let that cook away. And after a couple of seconds, we'll go ahead and flip these over. Oh yeah, look at that browning. Lovely. And then we'll go down with some provolone cheese and let that melt. And once looking nice and melty, we'll go ahead and stack this nice and tall and pull this out. Well, we go ahead and toast off our buns. Again, any bun you got will work. This is just a homemade hamburger bun, which should be very tasty, especially toasting up in all that mortadella fat. Yes, please. Beautiful. And to build, we've got our lovely toasted bun. We're gonna go down on the bottom bun with some mayonnaise. Just a nice healthy schmee. And on the top bun, we'll go down with some Dijon. And I love Dijon, and I love mayonnaise. I even love Dijonaise. And then we go down with our lovely, perfectly sized, cheesy, meaty mortadella and top it all off. And there it is, folks. Couldn't be much easier than that, except for the, making the mortadella part. And there it is, folks, in all its glory, a beautiful loaf of homemade mortadella turned into a beautiful cheesy sandwich and a whole bunch of extra slices to feed us throughout the week. Let's go ahead and dive in and see how this stuff came out. Bones.
Yeah.
Would you like to try some homemade mortadella followed by a sandwich?
Yes.
Have you ever made mortadella before?
I've never made mortadella, but I've made a lot of mortadella sandwiches, and it's one of my favorites. I love it.
I just love how that looks with the studdage in there.
Yeah.
The fact that it all worked out for my first try is very convenient.
Yeah, it looks legit.
You can see through it. That's so cool.
Are you eating it alone first?
Yeah, I want to just see how it came out by itself. A little cold cut style, a little roll up.
I do want to say that this is like much more pistachio-y
I
than
noticed
normal,
that.
but I'm here for it.
Yeah. That's nice. Great texture on that.
Yeah, that's legit. A little bit of smokiness too. That's really nice.
Not overpowering though.
No.
I was a little concerned about that. I'm still concerned about what the Italians are going to say, that I smoked mortadella, but I think
It's honestly,
a welcome addition.
yeah, it's just like a hint of flavor.
That was nice.
It's really
just
nice.
Very clean. You know, there's not many super bold flavors jumping out at you.
Yeah.
I like the amount of fat dispersion, but yeah, the amount of pistachios is
I
a
would
little.
dial it back a little bit.
That one looks a little bit more normal.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, once I got to the end, I noticed it started getting real pistachio heavy.
Yeah.
They started floating downstream. But let's go ahead and give this juicy guy a try, shall we?
Wow.
That is nice and juicy.
It's heavy.
It is. It's got some girth to it. Okay. I see what the hype is about. That is so much different than that just on its own.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
It comes together so much better than I was expecting. Like, this is one of those, the sum is greater than the parts, or however that term is.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple.
And it does seem like it's a lot of meat, but I think because it's sliced thin, there's a lot of air in it. And so it doesn't feel that heavy.
Honestly, I was concerned I didn't put enough meat in it. But then when you see that, it's like, it's in there. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I eat mortadella sandwiches all the time. This is
Do you cook
phenomenal.
them?
I usually do cold mortadella, but I do like a panini style with sourdough bread.
Yeah, that is immediately making me glad that we have a whole bunch. And then some. Because you can whip this up with pretty much any bread any day of the week.
Yeah.
Really juicy too. I like that a lot. Yeah, the little crispy bits from the flat top over there, the little Maillard on there, because it's such a fatty sausage, it got really nice and crisped up.
Don't call it a sausage, though. Italians will not like that.
Between the Italians and the South Africans, you can't call anything sausage. That's really good. I might make another.
Yeah, please.
Coming up. And with this last bite of homemade mortadella, I think it's time for the official taste test. Oops. All right, y'all, and that is it. That is how to make some absolutely fantastic scratch-made mortadella at home. I highly recommend giving this one a try, you know? I'm really excited that I'm starting to get more comfortable with these big emulsified sausages, because there really is nothing more satisfying than cracking into one of those things and seeing that perfect texture and that uniform color. And then you slice it up and it's got that really nice texture, kind of cold cut-esque, and you look at it and you're like, I made that. That's pretty cool. Not to mention having a whole bunch of really tasty mortadella on hand. Not mad about that, but it does beg the question, what should we make next? You know, we were talking about making a chicken one or a turkey one, just to have some really good cold cuts on hand, because it's a fun process. It is a bit lengthy, but if you're the weekend warrior that likes taking on a project, I'd highly recommend it. But also, let me know down below what you think I should make next. But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. I'd love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Team Chud members. Thank you for supporting this channel and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace.